Hi, my name is Lindsay McKenzie, and this is my vocabulary learning app, RealtyRef. I'm going to take you through the process of creating this app from creating my proto persona to prototyping the app itself. This is Erin. She's a young, single adult living on her own and currently in a career she doesn't love. Being a resident of San Francisco, she doesn't own a car and therefore uses public transportation and ride sharing to get around. Being employed full-time, she's limited to the amount of time she can devote to her goal of making a career move to real estate. She also has a very high cost of living, being in the city, and does not have extra funds to invest in extras like classes to get her real estate license. I'm trying to solve the problem of learning a new set of vocabulary that does not inhibit a user from a cost or convenience standpoint. It needs to be free or low cost and be convenient to start and stop when necessary, for example, for commuters, on lunch breaks, etc. Therefore, the problem statement would be, Erin needs a way to study for her real estate license in short intervals for free or low cost because her full-time job and high rent inhibit her ability to study in depth during the day. Some of the challenges Erin faces helps inform me of what would be the most effective way to create a studying app. Being a young person in an expensive city and working a full-time job leaves little spare time or money. Erin would like an app that will allow her to have flexibility with her studying schedule and needs features that allow her to revisit concepts that she's not familiar with. Erin said, "When I'm studying, I want to save words or phrases I'm not familiar with to revisit until I get them right. When I'm commuting to and from work, I want a simple, engaging way to stay productive. And when I'm speaking with a realtor or client, I want to be comfortable using the appropriate terminology." This led me to my user flows. As I looked at other vocabulary apps, I found that keeping it simple was the most appealing aspect both aesthetically and functionally, so I decided that flashcards would be a great tool to utilize. But I wanted to be able to give Erin a way to revisit words that she didn't feel she had 100% grasped. So for our first user flow is simply to complete a quiz. A quiz helps you feel more motivated to engage with flashcards, and earning badges and seeing a record of your progress can give a user that extra excitement or investment in engaging long term. The second user flow is to revisit a flagged word. I wanted this process to be separate from quizzing if necessary, so I decided that flagged words needed to be in their own category, so a user might go through that list and reference an individual word or concept in the moment and when they need it. Moving on to early prototyping. I spent a lot of time on my crazy eights at first. This was a big learning curve for me, and the time crunch of 8 minutes forced me to let go of things looking perfect and focus more on the functionality of the design I was creating. I also used the dot voting method and ended up liking a handful of ideas, kept some, and scrapped others. With wireframing, I really tried to sell the user with the splash page, which I ended up changing later. Once we get to our home page, I wanted a very simple and easy to read design that felt intuitive and not overwhelming. I felt that the best way to organize a massive amount of real estate lingo would be by category. For our flashcard quiz, I wanted a check mark and X to allow the users the ability to track how many words they were familiar with, as well as a flag to mark the ones they want to revisit. And for the flag words, I like the idea of a list where you could either click on an individual word or quiz all of the unfamiliar ones. Now on to usability testing. My 3 users were Matt, 28, a small business owner, Jenny, 24, a lab technician, and Doug, 50, a retired educator. I set up the prototype on my iPhone for each user to test while I took notes. I asked each user to narrate their thoughts and actions so that I could get a good idea of what they were thinking and feeling during the experience. I took notes while they completed each task and only interfered if they got stuck or had a specific question. The most significant observations from testing were: 1. Users were inclined to swipe through pages and the arrows were unclear. 2. The word quiz was confusing and users didn't know where to navigate to within the dashboard when looking for the categories page. 3. Users were generally confused about the format and would have benefited from a tutorial or an explanation of function and buttons. And 4. The checkmark and X buttons didn't make sense for flagged terms, and exiting the individual flashcard was confusing. For improvements, after usability testing, I completed the recommendations based on the 0 through 4 severity scale. In the introductory pages, I removed the bottom circles, made arrows bigger and appear more like buttons, and I moved the Create Account option to the first page. I created a demo indicating the functionality of buttons and the flashcard quiz. I added the word quiz in front of categories to make it clear what the categories were for. And finally, I updated the flashcard buttons to make it clear that tapping on an individual term will only show that definition. I also created a distinct exit button for the flag terms. For further revisions, I would love to go back and revisit user tests, sort out any basic complications, and make sure the functionality is as intuitive and simple as possible. I'll also consider reducing the number of screens on the onboarding tutorial and creating a visual measure for that process. What I learned. Crazy 8s and user flows were definitely my favorite part of the whole process. The time crunch of having only 8 minutes really forced me to ignore the perfectionist side of me that wanted to spend time and make all of the details look nice, and really forced me to look at the design and functionality of each screen that I was creating. And the user flows helped me organize my thoughts and the physical process of completing a single task at a time. I really enjoyed the user testing as well because it helped me get kind of a real-time, real-life feedback from people that might actually be using an app like this, who didn't already understand the basic layout and what each button would do. So it was really useful information and feedback. And finally, the usability testing, reporting, and severity ranking really helped me to kind of organize my thoughts and find simple solutions to problems that either kept occurring or were significant enough that when they did occur, made it really important for me to change. The cons were time management. I really had to redefine how I wanted to go about managing my time in creating this app because at first I got too caught up on the details and realized that those weren't even important until later on because I'd be making big changes to a lot of my screens to begin with. And to that effect, expecting perfection on the first try really limited my ability to think about the functionality of each page and how I wanted each task to be completed. And finally, just having a limited skill in user interviews in general was a little bit intimidating going into the user testing. I felt like I could have done better on my interviews just in terms of engaging with the interviewees and creating a better script, but it was all a part of the learning process. So that is all for my app. I hope you enjoyed this video and like my app.